At a lavish dinner, my husband announced he was giving his $250,000 bonus to his mother, then told me to pay for the meal. I smirked. My money's already with my mom, and his entire family froze. Have you ever watched your husband grandly gift $250,000 bonus to his mother, then nonchalantly toss you his credit card to cover the $1,500 steak dinner? Amidst the applause from my in-laws, I just smiled. What a coincidence. I just transferred my $300,000 commission to my own mother. The moment his family turned to stone was just the opening shot in my battle to reclaim my self-respect. From the shadows of a toxic marriage to the cutthroat intrigues of the Los Angeles corporate world, I remade myself into the queen of my own life. What truth forced a traitor to his knees, begging in vain? Follow to the end to witness the most spectacular comeback. The atmosphere in the private dining room of the upscale steakhouse was buzzing with laughter. My husband's entire family was celebrating. A massive tomahawk steak sizzled on a platter in the center of the table, its marbled fat rendering and popping, like the undercurrent of resentment boiling inside me. David, my husband, his face flushed with wine and self-satisfaction, tapped his fork against his glass. The table fell silent, all eyes turning to him. He stood, straightened his designer shirt, took a deep breath, and declared, "This year has been incredible." The new project was a massive success. I just received a bonus of $250,000. I'd like to give this entire gift to my mom, to thank her for all the sacrifices she made to raise me into the man I am today. With that, he pulled a crisp cashier's check from his jacket pocket and, with two hands, carefully placed it in the hands of Carol, my mother-in-law. Carol snatched the check, her sharp eyes suddenly welling with theatrical tears. She dabbed at the corners with a napkin, her voice trembling with emotion. "Oh, David, you shouldn't have. Your health and a happy family are all I need. But this is a token of your love, so I'll accept it. I'll keep it safe for you. A parent's love is boundless. To see you remember your old mother like this, my work is truly done." Across from me, Jessica, my sister-in-law, with her perfectly painted red lips, immediately burst into thunderous applause. Her shrill voice echoed in the room. "Oh my God, David, you're the best. The brother everyone wishes they had. You're the best, Mom. All the women at the country club will be green with envy, not like those other families where the son gets married and forgets who raised him, becoming totally whipped." Frank, my father-in-law, who had been silently sipping his scotch, now nodded in satisfaction, stroking his chin. "That's my son. He understands loyalty. A real man never forgets his roots." I sat there quietly, my fork toying with a piece of wilted asparagus on my plate. No one looked at me. Not a single person in that room, including the man I called my husband, acknowledged the existence of the wife who had weathered countless storms with him to get to this day. There's an old saying, behind every great man is a great woman, but in the eyes of this family, all glory belonged to their golden boy alone. My contributions were treated as a given, an unspoken expectation. I lowered my gaze, hiding the bitter, cynical smile threatening to form on my lips. I'd had enough of this family values stage play. The boisterous dinner finally wound down. A waiter in a starched uniform entered, placing the leather bill folder on the table. "Sir, ma'am, your total this evening is $1,580. David, leisurely picking his teeth, looked bloated and self-satisfied. He casually pulled out his wallet, took out a platinum Amex, and tossed it onto the table in front of me with a soft thud. Without even looking up, he said in a commanding tone, "Go, take care of that, honey, and make sure you get a receipt for the business." The credit card lay there, stark against the dark wood, reflecting the dim, warm light. The world around me seemed to freeze. I didn't reach for the card. I slowly took a napkin, meticulously wiped the corners of my mouth, and then deliberately lifted my head to look David straight in the eye. My gaze must have been so unnervingly calm that it startled him. "It's your card, David. You go pay." My voice was quiet, but each word landed with perfect clarity. David's brow furrowed, visibly annoyed by my lack of cooperation in front of his family. "What's the big deal? It's just paying a bill. Does it hurt you to use my card? Don't embarrass me." I smiled, a cold, long smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Oh no, that's not it. I just mean, it's your card, so you should pay. As for my money, I'm busy using it for something else." I paused, glancing at the bewildered faces of my in-laws, then spoke clearly. "What a coincidence. I also received my annual commission today, a total of $300,000. Jessica's eyes widened. Carol stopped fidgeting with her purse. David leaned forward. $300,000? Why didn't you tell me? Why should I? I shrugged nonchalantly. You had your $250,000 bonus to honor your mother. I have my $300,000 commission. I just wired the entire amount to my own mother's account. Everyone's money for their own parents, I continued, my voice steady. My mother gave birth to me, raised me, put me through college. Now that her daughter has achieved a little something, honoring her is the natural thing to do, isn't it, David?" Clang! The silver spoon in Carol's hand fell onto her porcelain plate, the piercing sound shattering the tense atmosphere. Her mouth hung open, her face frozen as if someone had just thrown a bucket of ice water on her. Jessica was petrified, her red lips pressed into a thin line, unable to utter another word of praise. Frank dropped the piece of steak he was about to eat. As for David, his face went from flushed red to a deathly pale. His eyes bulged as he stared at me in disbelief, shock, and a barely suppressed rage. He stammered, unable to believe what he was hearing. What did you just say? $300,000. You sent it all to your family without even discussing it with me. What do you think this family is? Do you even consider me your husband?" I stood up, adjusting the strap of my handbag on my shoulder, and met his panicked gaze with the most resolute look I'd had in years of being his wife. "When you transferred $250,000 to your mother, did you remember you had a wife sitting right next to you? The rules are fair." David, this play about filial piety, it's a bit dull with only one actor. I thought I'd join in to keep you company. With that, I gave a curt, polite nod to my in-laws and turned, walking out of the private room, leaving behind a chaotic mess of shock and unspoken fury. The sizzle of the steak on the table continued, but for me, this marriage had gone cold a long, long time ago. The Uber ride back from the restaurant was suffocating. The air was so thick with tension you could cut it with a knife. No one spoke. David sat in the front, arms crossed, his face a thunderous mask, occasionally shooting me a look in the rearview mirror that could kill. In the back, Carol sighed dramatically every few seconds, while Jessica tapped her foot impatiently against the floor. I stared out the window, letting the yellow streetlights wash over my stoic face. The bustling city outside felt like another universe, completely separate from the tangled mess I was trapped in. Our luxury condo on the Upper West Side came into view, a familiar sight that suddenly felt alien and hostile. As the solid wood door opened, a chill from the four walls hit me, making me shiver. I scanned the living room, meticulously decorated with art and designer chandeliers, and a bitter lump formed in my throat. This home, this nest, I had paid for more than half of it with my own sweat and tears, with sleepless nights spent chasing project deadlines until I was exhausted. But because of David's smooth talk about how the man should have his name on the deed to command respect, I had foolishly agreed. Now, on that black and white property title, my name, Elena, was nowhere to be found. I was nothing more than a long-term, prepaid tenant in my own home. The moment I stepped over the threshold and took off my heels, the next act of the drama began. Carol suddenly swayed, clutching her chest, her face contorting in agony. She collapsed onto the velvet sofa, moaning in broken gasps. "Oh my God, my chest. I can't breathe. My blood pressure, it's going through the roof. David, get my pills. I think I'm having a heart attack." Jessica immediately threw her designer bag on the table and jumped up as if she'd been zapped. She rushed to her mother's side, rubbing her chest before whirling around to glare at me, her words like daggers. "Are you happy now, Elena? You want to push my mother to her grave, don't you? You live in this house, in the lap of luxury, taken care of by our family, and you're so ungrateful. Over a little bit of money, you humiliate my brother in public. You are a thankless, vicious viper." David seized his cue, storming toward me and pointing a finger in my face, the veins in his neck bulging. "Look, Look what you've done to my mother with your selfishness and cruelty. What kind of wife are you? You don't contribute to this family. A woman marries into a family, and she follows its ways. Your assets are this family's assets. You took money and gave it to your family without my permission. Do you think I'm dead? I'm telling you, if anything happens to my mother, I will make you pay. The accusations echoed through the living room, bouncing off the walls and ringing in my ears. I stood frozen in the middle of the room, watching these three people perform their rehearsed play with cold, empty eyes. There were no tears, no panic, no trace of the hurt I used to feel during past arguments. My heart was now a block of ice, cold and hard. Years of Enai had finally transformed into a fierce power of resistance. I sneered, a dry, humorless laugh escaping my throat. That's enough. The show is over. My voice wasn't loud, but its low, steely tone was enough to silence all three of them. Carol even forgot to moan, peeking at me through one narrowed eye. I walked slowly to the media console, pulled open the bottom drawer, and took out a worn, leather-bound notebook. It was the ledger I used to track household expenses, but it was also where I kept the dirty secrets I had uncovered and silently endured for so long. I slapped the notebook down on the glass coffee table, leaning forward on my hands, my eyes boring into David's, which were starting to dart around nervously. You say I don't contribute? You say my assets belong to this family. Fine. Let's open the books today and see who really owes whom. I flipped through the pages, my voice as clear and final as a judge delivering a verdict. Did you think I was deaf and blind? The money you secretly withdrew from our joint savings to send to your mother for her kitchen remodel. The gold jewelry you bought her. I know it all. As a husband, your heart has only ever been with your own family. You've been draining my hard work to play the role of the perfect, filial son. My gaze shifted to Jessica, who was beginning to look pale. And you, Jessica. That new convertible you're driving around town? You think that money fell from the sky? It came from my blood, sweat, and tears. Money your brother lied about, claiming he was lending it to a friend for a startup, when he was secretly funding your entitled lifestyle. How dare you stand there and lecture me when you're living off my back? Finally, I looked directly at Carol, who was now sitting stiffly on the sofa, her high blood pressure act completely abandoned. The pent-up emotion I had suppressed for years surged, making my voice tremble with rage. But all of that dirty money, I can write it off as a charity donation. What disgusts me the most, what made my heart turn completely to ice, is your cruelty, David. The time my own father was critically ill, and I was scrambling for money to cover his hospital bills. When I asked to withdraw from our joint fund money that I had earned, what did you say? Do you remember? You said, old people's illnesses are a black hole. You can throw a mountain of money at it, and it won't make a difference. Then you brushed me off, took the bank card, and went out drinking with your friends. You begrudged every dollar for my father's life-saving medicine, but you're willing to throw away hundreds of thousands to stroke your family's ego. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by David's ragged breathing and the ticking of the wall clock. The raw truths, laid bare, left them speechless. Shame and anger warred on their faces. They say blood is thicker than water, but in this house, that only applies to the blood of your family. To me, you've acted like penny-wise, pound-foolish hypocrites, always looking down on me, treating your daughter-in-law as nothing more than a walking, talking ATM. I didn't bother to look at their humiliated expressions for another second. I turned and walked into the master bedroom, opened the closet, and decisively gathered my duvet and pillows. I marched back out and, with all my strength, threw them onto the long chaise lounge in the living room. Dust motes danced in the fluorescent light. I stood with my arms crossed, my posture erect, and delivered each word like a razor blade. From this moment on, your fantasy of a submissive, money-printing daughter-in-law is officially over. This condo is in your name. I won't fight you for the bed. You can all huddle together and continue your happy family charade. Cut. I turned and walked straight out to the balcony, leaving them frozen in the wreckage of the truth I had just exposed. The night wind felt cool against my skin. The dam had broken, and I knew that beyond the dark night sky, the dawn of my liberation was waiting. A pale morning sunbeam slipped through the blinds, touching my eyelids and stirring me awake. I had spent the night on the cold living room chaise, expecting to toss and turn or cry myself to sleep. But strangely, I had sunk into a deep, dreamless slumber. As I stretched, my chest wasn't filled with the sorrow of a wife who had just torn down a facade of happiness, but with a surprising sense of peace. It felt like someone who had been carrying a heavy, jagged rock on a long, arduous journey had finally found the courage to hurl it into a ravine. I looked around the quiet living room. I had chosen this velvet sofa myself, visiting dozens of showrooms to find the perfect color. The crystal chandelier was paid for with my last quarterly bonus. Everything here bore the mark of my hard work. But ironically, in my in-laws' eyes, I was just a tenant who didn't pay rent. I glanced at the closed bedroom door. Inside, David and his family were probably still asleep, or perhaps they were plotting how to deal with this rebellious daughter-in-law. I smirked, folded the duvet neatly, changed into my work clothes, and walked out the front door without a sound. No breakfast was made, no coffee was brewed. From this moment on, I was no longer the unpaid servant of this household. At the office, the bustling work environment quickly drew me in. Busyness, sometimes, is the best anesthetic. Suddenly, my assistant knocked on the door. "Elena, the CEO wants to see you in his office, immediately." The CEO's quiet office always exuded an invisible pressure, but today, his kind smile and the hot cup of tea he pushed toward me were strangely calming. "Elena, the company has recognized your capabilities for years. You've successfully managed major projects and brought in significant profits." He paused, looking at me with expectant eyes. "Right now, our West Coast division is in trouble. Their revenue is plummeting, and they need a strong captain to right the ship. The board has decided to transfer you to Los Angeles to take over as regional director. What do you think?" The offer fell from the sky like a life raft, thrown to me just as I was desperate to escape the mire of my life. Los Angeles, the land of sunshine, of warmth and opportunity. A place with no sign of David's deceit, Carol's fake illnesses, or Jessica's jealous glares. A new horizon where I could freely rebuild my life. It felt like destiny. I smiled and gave a firm nod, a silent, solid promise. "You can count on me, sir. I'm ready for a new challenge. I won't let you down." With the appointment letter in hand, I left the office early. The New York air was chilly, but a fire of determination burned within me. I drove straight to the office of Mr. Adler, a name known throughout Manhattan's legal circles. He was a man in his late 50s, with eyes as sharp as a hawk, specializing in contentious divorces and complex asset disputes. Pushing open the heavy glass door, I placed a thick stack of documents and my worn ledger on his imposing oak desk. Bank statements, records of David's secret money transfers over the years, and evidence of him siphoning marital assets to play the filial son were all there. Mr. Adler took a sip of his black coffee, flipping through the pages, his eyes glinting with professional savvy. He nodded, adjusting his glasses. "You've done your homework, young lady. Meticulous. Your husband thought he was clever, but he left a clear paper trail. Money doesn't just disappear. The bank records every transaction. The condo may be in his name, but it was acquired during the marriage, and you have clear proof of your financial contributions. He won't be able to hide behind that." I gave a humorless smile, my eyes hardening with resolve. "I'm not interested in fighting for things that aren't mine, Mr. Adler. But I will not let him steal 1 cent of my hard-earned money to fund his family's vanity projects. I need your help drafting a document. A clear agreement. I want to lay all the cards on the table before I walk away from this mess." Under the sharp guidance of the veteran lawyer, I drafted the terms of a postnuptial agreement. Each word, each clause, was cold and ruthless, just like the way David's family had treated me. The document laid out stark, unyielding terms. From now on, our finances would be completely separate. No one could touch the other's wallet. We would each earn our own money, pay our own debts. If a parent fell ill, the respective child would be solely responsible for the cost of their care. The excuse of family could never again be used to extort money from the other spouse. It didn't stop there. Chores, cooking, cleaning, laundry things that had been implicitly considered my duty, were now quantified and divided equally. Each task was assigned a market-rate monetary value. If David refused to do his share of the housework, he would have to pay me for my labor or hire a cleaning service himself. Holding the freshly printed agreement, the smell of ink still sharp, my eyes stung, but not a single tear fell. The years of biting my tongue, of prioritizing peace at the cost of my dignity, had turned to ash. I once dreamed of a harmonious home, believing in the power of a united partnership. But David and his family saw my sacrifice as the blind devotion of a fool. They saw my labor as free, my money as an endless well for them to drain. This thin piece of paper was more than a financial agreement. It was the death certificate for our rotten marriage. It stripped his family of the right to brazenly leech off my efforts and, in doing so, it gave me back the self-respect and pride I had lost the day I walked into his family's life. I carefully folded the document and placed it in my purse. My hand rested on the leather. The net had been cast, the trap perfectly set. All that was left was for the greedy, entitled, and selfish to walk right into it. Now, we would see who would be crying in the end. The office was quiet, the only sound the rhythmic click of my keyboard as I organized files for my upcoming move to the West Coast. Everything was proceeding smoothly when my phone buzzed, shattering my concentration. The name Jessica flashed on the screen. I sighed, answered, and held the phone away from my ear. Just as I expected, before I could say a word, a torrent of shrill, chaotic noise erupted from the other end, a mix of fake sobs and sharp accusations. "Elena, are you happy now? You provoked Mom so much her blood pressure shot through the roof, and she fainted. We're rushing her to the emergency room at Mount Sinai right now. What kind of evil daughter-in-law are you? Do you want her dead? I'm telling you, if anything happens to my mother, this family will not let you get away with it. You get your ass over here right now," Jessica shrieked, performing the role of a tragic victim for all it was worth. I remained calm, taking a sip of water to wash away the bitter taste of exhaustion before replying softly. "All right. Calm down and take care of your mother. Text me the room number. I'll be right there." The call ended abruptly. I smiled faintly. The chest-clutching, can't-breathe act that failed at home was now getting a change of venue to the hospital for added dramatic effect. If they were going to go to the trouble of setting the stage, it was only right for me, the daughter-in-law, to show up and watch the performance. On the way, I stopped at a gourmet market and carefully selected a beautiful gift basket of imported fruits, tied with a large red silk bow. As the old saying goes, when visiting the sick, you must bring a gift. I wouldn't want to be accused of being rude. I walked through the automatic doors of the hospital, the sterile smell of antiseptic hitting me instantly. It mingled with the low groans of patients and the hurried footsteps of doctors and nurses. The drama of life and death here was real. Yet I knew that in one of those rooms, a different kind of drama, one of greed and manipulation, was being staged. Following the room number Jessica sent, I found my way to the private wing. The hallway was quiet, the polished white floors reflecting the dim fluorescent lights. I stood before the slightly ajar door of the hospital room, my hand raised to knock, when I froze. Through the thin crack, voices from inside carried clearly, shattering any image of a patient on the brink of death. It was Carol's voice, sharp and clear, with none of the weakness of someone who had just suffered a hypertensive crisis. I could even hear the distinct crunch of her chewing an apple. "Jessica, peel another one for me." God, being in the hospital like this is actually pretty relaxing. "Where's David? Did you call that wife of his yet? When she shows her face, you have to give her the cold shoulder. Let her know who's in charge in this family." David's weary sigh cut in, laced with the frustration of someone used to depending on others. "Mom, this is too much. What if she gets angry and makes a scene here at the hospital? It'll be so embarrassing. Besides, she's holding on to that $300,000 commission. If she gets pushed too far and takes it all to her family, how am I supposed to make the mortgage payment next month? My credit card is already maxed out from that dinner." Jessica interjected, her voice sharp and scheming, like a strategist plotting a battle. "You are such a weak man. What are you afraid of? You have to be tough. She's the daughter-in-law. She has to bow down to this family. Just Let Mom stay in the hospital for a few more days. When Elena comes, Mom, you just lie there with your eyes closed, cry a little, and talk about how she's an ungrateful, cruel daughter-in-law who stressed you out so much you ended up here. With all the doctors, nurses, and other people watching, she'll be branded as a monster. The social pressure, combined with her own sense of guilt, will force her to hand over that $300,000 to appease you. Then you'll have money for the mortgage, and Mom will have taught that upstart a lesson. It's a win-win. Carol cackled, slapping her thigh with a loud thwack. My daughter, you think just like me. Don't you worry, David. I know your wife. She's all about keeping up appearances and hates public conflict. Once she's here, I'll put on a performance that will win me an Oscar. The money she earns is this family's money. It's not going anywhere. When she comes in, just scold her a little to show you're the man of the house. I'll handle the rest. Every word they spoke was as sharp as a knife, as cold as ice. They were using family, using health, as tools for extortion, as weapons to oppress and exploit me. My already cold heart grew even harder. The people in that room were not my family. They were a pack of leeches, waiting to suck the last drop of my blood. I took a deep, steadying breath, a wry, mocking smile on my face. A performance deserves an audience. I used the toe of my shoe to push the door wide open. The creak of the hinges made the three of them jump, their heads whipping toward the entrance. Carol, caught mid-bite of her apple, quickly tossed it aside, clutched her chest, and began her moaning routine. Oh, God, the pain. David shot up from his chair, his eyes darting away, unable to meet my direct gaze. Jessica, however, maintained her defiant stance, hands on her hips. You finally decided to show your face? Look at what you've done to our mother. I walked in calmly and placed the beautiful fruit basket on the bedside table with a deliberate, slightly too loud thud, making Carol flinch. I crossed my arms, my gaze sweeping over the three actors on the stage, my eyes as placid as a deep lake. A hospital is for healing, not for theater. Your cheap act isn't fooling anyone, Carol. My voice was level but sharp enough to pierce their facade. I stood outside long enough to hear all about Jessica's win-win plan. How's the apple, Mom? If you like it, you should eat more. You might find it hard to swallow anything later. All three of them froze, speechless. Carol's moans died in her throat, her face turning ashen. Jessica stammered, taking a step back. David rushed over, grabbing my arm. Elena, you misheard. Mom really isn't feeling well. I yanked my arm away, stepping back to create distance. My patience had reached its absolute limit. From my handbag, I pulled out the freshly printed postnuptial agreement and threw it onto the pristine white hospital bed. The papers landed amidst the half-eaten apple peels, a stark symbol of the cold, decisive end of a woman who had seen through all the deceit. I have neither the time nor the interest to argue with people who have no integrity. Since you went to the trouble of faking an illness, you might as well stay and rest. Enjoy the fruit, but stop plotting against others. You'll only bring more misery upon yourselves. My voice hardened, my gaze locking onto David's sweating face. Read that document carefully. It's a postnuptial agreement for financial independence, drafted by Mr. Adler, a lawyer whose reputation you know all too well. From now on, your money is your money, my money is my money. Your debts are your debts. You take care of your parents, and I'll take care of mine. You've played the part of the big, responsible man for so long, David. Now it's time to actually stand on your own 2 feet. Read it and sign it. I crossed my arms, tapping my foot on the linoleum floor, the sound like a ticking time bomb. You have 2 choices. 1, you sign it, and we play fair from now on. 2, we go to court, and I will rip this happy family mask to shreds. If we do that, I will demand a full division of assets, including the condo you have in your name but was purchased largely with my money, and with the help of a forensic accountant, I will expose every cent you siphoned from our joint accounts. The choice is yours, but you don't have much time. They say marriages begin with vows under romantic lights, but no one ever tells you that some end on a cold, sterile negotiating table reeking of legal jargon. Mr. Adler's office was a sea of calm, mahogany brown, the faint scent of sandalwood, attempting to mask the oppressive weight of 1,000 legal disputes stacked high in files. I sat with my legs crossed, my back straight, my fingers wrapped around a cup of herbal tea. Across from me were 2 empty chairs. My heart was a placid lake, without a single ripple of sorrow or regret. Any affection or tolerance I had for that family had been left behind at the doors of that hospital. All I needed now was clarity, a clarity so complete it bordered on ruthless. The heavy glass door was pushed open, and David entered, followed closely by Carol. Gone was the frail, moaning patient from the hospital bed. Today, Carol was dressed in a crimson velvet pantsuit, a string of pearls at her neck, marching in like a general ready for battle. The moment she saw me, her sharp eyebrows knitted together, her cheeks trembling with rage. She yanked a chair out, scraping it across the hardwood floor, and sat down with a thud, glaring at me. "You ungrateful wretch! You bite the hand that feeds you," she shrieked, slamming her purse on the table, shattering the room's tranquility. "We took you in, gave you a home, and now that you've grown your wings, you plan to plunder our family's assets for your own parents. And you dare to hire a lawyer? The old sayings are true. A venomous woman is worse than a snake. My son was truly cursed the day he brought you into this family." David sat beside her, his face ashen, occasionally glancing nervously at Mr. Adler, who was calmly reviewing a file. He tried to salvage a shred of his pride. "Elena, don't blow this out of proportion. This is a private family matter. Why are you airing our dirty laundry in front of a stranger? Mom is sick, and you're forcing her to come here. Do you have any humanity left? How far are you going to push us?" I gently set my teacup down. The clink of ceramic on glass was a crisp, definitive sound. I felt no anger, no need to defend myself. I looked straight at David and offered a faint, contemptuous smile. Humanity? Was it humanity when you and your family leeched off me to finance your pretentious lifestyle? You treated my labor as a money machine to dress you in velvet and buy you convertibles, while I scrimped and saved to run our household. Mr. Adler, please proceed. I have no desire to waste another breath on people who twist the truth. Mr. Adler adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. His demeanor was calm, but he radiated the formidable authority of a man who had spent a lifetime in courtrooms. He slowly pulled a thick file from his briefcase and placed it firmly on the table. "Good afternoon, Carol David. I am Mr. Adler, representing Miss Elena in this matter of asset division." His voice was deep and steady. "David, you mentioned airing dirty laundry. Perhaps today we should take off the shirt and see just how infected the wounds underneath truly are." David swallowed hard, beads of sweat forming on his brow. But Carol remained defiant, puffing out her chest. "Who the hell are you to interfere in my family's business? My son earned that money, the house is in his name. He has the right to decide what to do with it. A daughter-in-law is supposed to obey her husband's family. That's the way of the world." Mr. Adler smiled faintly, the smile of a man holding a sword. He slid a stack of bank statements, stamped with official seals, across the table toward David. "Ma'am, according to marital law in this state, any asset acquired during the marriage is considered community property, regardless of whose name is on the title. But what's more pertinent here is..." He paused, his sharp gaze fixed on David's rapidly paling face. "Over the past 5 years, my client has diligently contributed her income to the joint account for mortgage payments and household expenses. However, Mr. David, you have consistently made a series of highly suspicious transfers. 10,000 a month here, 20,000 there, sometimes as much as 100,000 in a single transaction. All of it funneled into a single account under the name Carol Miller. The total amount of dissipated assets, to date, exceeds $500,000. Carol's face went white. Her shrill voice was suddenly gone, her mouth agape. David flinched as if he'd been electrocuted, snatching the statements. As he saw the familiar numbers, confirmed by the bank's official stamp, his hands began to tremble violently. Mr. Adler gave them no time to recover, delivering another fatal blow. Under the law, the act of dissipating marital assets for personal use without the consent of a spouse is a serious violation. Miss Elena has every right to sue, to have the court declare those transactions void, and to have the bank freeze your account. Carol, to recover the funds. Furthermore, in a divorce proceeding, with this clear evidence of spousal misconduct, and with proof that the majority of the income for the house came from Miss Elena, the court could very well award the bulk of the property's value to my client. David, do you understand what that means? It means you could walk away with nothing but a mountain of credit card debt. David looked as if the life had been drained from him. He slumped back in his chair, gasping for air, his face utterly bloodless. The arrogant, condescending man who used to berate his wife had vanished, replaced by a pathetic, cornered coward. Carol, beside him, shriveled, her hands clutching her velvet suit, her eyes filled with panic as she watched her golden boy crumble. She finally understood that in the face of the law, her emotional blackmail and rants were worthless. I watched their pathetic display with a profound sense of vindication. Seeing those who had used fake morality to trample on me now trembling before black and white proof was satisfying to my very core. I calmly took out the postnuptial agreement and a pen, pushing them toward David. I tapped my finger on the cold glass table, read it again, carefully. And then sign it. Starting today, we each keep our own money and handle our own problems. If you don't sign, the lawsuit will be filed with the court tomorrow morning. And when that happens, don't blame me for being merciless. You threw the first stone, David, at that dinner party. Now it has boomeranged and hit you squarely in the back. David looked up, his eyes bloodshot and desperate, filled with a mixture of hatred and utter helplessness. His trembling hand reached for the pen. He hesitated, looking at his mother, then at the bank statements. Finally, crushed by the weight of the evidence and the threat of losing everything, he clenched his jaw and scrawled a shaky, distorted signature at the bottom of the page. I calmly retrieved the agreement and tucked it safely into my purse. This bloodless legal battle was over, with an absolute victory on my side. The sentence for our marriage had been executed, severing all the tentacles that had been draining the life out of me. I stood, nodded to Mr. Adler, and walked out of the room with my head held high, the sound of my heels clicking rhythmically on the floor, leaving behind two broken figures, completely defeated at a negotiating table, devoid of humanity. The air in the Upper West Side condo was thick and still, heavy with a grim silence. I quietly pulled two large suitcases into the middle of the bedroom and began to collect my things. I folded each silk blouse, each tailored suit, my heart as calm as a windless lake. There were no tears, no dramatic sighs. I looked around the room that was once my home, where I had arranged every vase of flowers and smoothed every bedsheet in an effort to build a happy life. Now, it was all just shattered pieces of a long-running lie. The expensive furniture, the luxury decor, all bought with my hard-earned money, I left them all exactly where they were. I only took what was truly, personally mine. I was shedding the skin of a daughter-in-law to become a free woman again, even if my shoulders bore the weight of indelible scars. The sound of the suitcase wheels clicking across the hardwood floor broke the silence. David was leaning against the bedroom doorframe, his eyes dark and tired, watching my every move. Since being forced to sign the agreement, his usual arrogance had been completely shattered. He shifted his weight, wringing his hands, as if searching for a final life raft in the flood he himself had created. "Elena, are you really this heartless?" His voice was hoarse and weak. "People say even a day of marriage creates a bond for 100 days. We've been through so much together. Are you really going to throw it all away over a piece of paper, over a little bit of pride? Mom is old. She says harsh things, but she just wants the family to be happy. As a daughter-in-law, if you had just been a little more patient, things wouldn't have fallen apart like this." I stopped packing and turned to face the man who was once my entire world. My heart had hardened. There was no room for pity or sentiment. "David, patience is for people who appreciate it. In this family, for every 10 steps of patience I took, you all took 11 steps of entitlement. In your family's eyes, my sacrifices were like building sandcastles at the beach, a pointless effort. The condo is in your name. Consider the furniture a final parting gift. For the years we called each other husband and wife, our journey together is over. You can have your perfect, happy, filial family facade all to yourself." Without giving him a chance to respond, I decisively wheeled my two suitcases out the door. The The sound of the lock clicking shut behind me was a final, definitive period, severing the dark ties that had bound my life. I walked away, my back straight, my heels echoing in the empty hallway. Through the window of the taxi, the streets of New York blurred behind me. The old, familiar buildings, the corners where we once walked hand in hand, all faded into the distance. JFK Airport came into view, a chaotic hub of reunions and farewells. Suddenly, my phone vibrated. The screen lit up with the name Mom. My heart tightened with a pang of guilt and emotion. In the midst of my war with my in-laws, I hadn't even had time to call my own parents, only quietly wiring the money to give myself a sliver of peace. I took a deep breath and answered. On the other end, my mother Maria's voice was soft and warm, but tinged with a tremble. "Elena, honey, you must be so busy with work. Your father and I received the money you sent. You work so hard, saving every penny. Why did you send us so much? You have so many expenses with your own household. You shouldn't send everything to us and leave yourself short. What will your in-laws think?" My eyes burned. Both were mothers, but the difference was staggering. Carol saw my money as tribute she was owed. My own mother worried about every dollar I earned, afraid I would suffer in my husband's home. "Mom, I'm fine," I managed to say, my voice thick with emotion. "It was my commission. I want to give it to you and Dad, for your retirement, for your health. Please, just keep it and use it. Don't worry about me." I fought back a sob, trying to keep my voice steady. I could hear her sniffling on the other end. After a moment, she continued, each word a needle piercing the tough exterior I had built. "I know your heart, my dear, but honey, a parent's only wish is to see their child happy and settled. The money you sent, your father and I talked it over. We wouldn't dare spend it recklessly. We went into the city and used it to put a down payment on a place in a very nice assisted living community. All the paperwork is done." I was stunned. The phone almost slipped from my hand. "Assisted living? Mom, why would you do that? I'm working to support you. I never once complained or thought of you as a burden." My mother's voice finally broke, a sob escaping. "My sweet, foolish girl, your father and I are getting old. We can't be a burden on you forever. We know your life with David's family hasn't been easy. We see how thin you've become, how much you've endured, and it breaks our hearts. We kept quiet because we didn't want to cause trouble in your marriage. But by moving into a place with proper medical care, you won't have to worry about us anymore. You won't have to bear the criticism of using your husband's family's money to care for your own parents. Elena, live for yourself now, be decisive, and walk forward with your head held high. Don't bow down to anyone because of us." At that moment, the fortress I had built around my heart crumbled. The first tears I had allowed myself to cry in weeks finally fell, hot and bitter, down my cheeks. A mother's love was so profound she was willing to sacrifice her own comfort and pride in her old age just to give her daughter a chance at peace. I buried my face in my hands and wept, releasing all the pain, the humiliation, and the overwhelming gratitude. "Mom, thank you," I choked out. "I promise you, I will live a good life. A brilliant life." The call ended, leaving an echo of emotion in the silence. Standing in the vast airport terminal, I lifted my head and took a deep breath of free air. The announcer's voice called for boarding for the flight to Los Angeles. I pulled up my collar, gripped the handle of my suitcase, and walked with firm, steady steps toward the security gate. This flight wasn't just taking me away from a cold city of bitter memories. It was carrying a soul reborn from the boundless love of my family. The brilliant sunshine of Southern California was waiting for me, heralding a new beginning where I would paint the canvas of my life with my own resilient hands. The Southern California sun greeted me with a warm embrace, chasing away the last vestiges of New York's chill from my clothes. Los Angeles was a vibrant, chaotic symphony of traffic and people, its wide boulevards flowing with a relentless energy. The apartment I rented, high up in a quiet residential tower, had no expensive velvet sofas or ornate crystal chandeliers, just a simple, clean bed, a rustic wooden table, and a large window flooded with light. Sinking into the mattress, I inhaled the scent of lemongrass and felt a profound lightness. There were no more of Carol's cutting remarks, no more of David's cold calculations. I was just Elena, an independent woman with the responsibility of steering an entire corporate division through a storm. Walking into the West Coast office, I wore a perfectly tailored business suit, a suit of armor hiding the scars of my past. My face set with a professional, practiced smile. The office greeted me with a wary silence, filled with curious, appraising glances. It was no surprise. A female executive from the East Coast, sent to fill the long vacant director's chair, was bound to disrupt the established order. The first to greet me was Mark, the sales director, a man the office secretly called the Snake. Mark was about David's age, but he exuded the slick polish of a seasoned corporate player. He wore an expensive, unbuttoned shirt, his hair slicked back with gel, a smirk playing on his lips. "Welcome to Sunny L.A., Director," he said, extending a hand that smelled strongly of cologne. "The team here has heard great things, young, talented, and the only woman on the leadership team. But you should know, the market here is a different beast. Fickle clients, choppy waters. You're new here, so take your time, settle in. You can leave the heavy lifting to me. As they say, when in Rome, you just relax and enjoy the corner office. The guys and I know how to keep things running." I took his hand in a brief, firm shake, my eyes locked on his disingenuous smile. I knew exactly what he was saying. He was warning me, trying to relegate me to the role of a powerless figurehead so he could continue his reign. "Thank you for the warm welcome, Mark," I replied coolly, my voice soft but sharp. "You're right, when in Rome. But a corporation still has corporate laws. I'm not here to enjoy the view. I'm here to roll up my sleeves and help clean up the issues that are dragging down our revenue. It seems the burden you've been carrying is a bit too heavy. From now on, I'll be sharing that load. Everything will be transparent and by the book." The smirk on Mark's face tightened. He squinted, nodded slowly, and withdrew his hand. "Well then, I wish you a steady hand at the helm." Sitting in my new office, I dove headfirst into reviewing the books, financial reports, and distributor contracts. The numbers didn't lie, but the people who created them were master illusionists. A quick glance at the commission structures revealed a tangled mess. The largest distributors were all under Mark's direct control. Their commission rates were unusually high, yet their reported sales were mediocre. He had skillfully placed his loyalists in every department, from accounting to logistics, creating a closed ecosystem to siphon company funds into his own pockets. I smirked. Mark thought I was a naive newcomer. He didn't know I had survived the toxic incubator of my former in-laws. His petty schemes were child's play compared to the brazen greed of Carol and David. A hidden enemy is dangerous, but one who has already shown his hand is easy to trap. However, a snake in the grass always strikes where you least expect it. Just as I began to tighten the approval process for expenditures, directly threatening the old guard's income stream, a bombshell was dropped. As I walked into the office building, I could feel the furtive glances and hear the hushed whispers. Employees huddled by the coffee machine fell silent and scattered as I approached, their eyes glued to their computer screens. My intuition screamed that something was wrong. I walked quickly to my office and turned on my computer. On the company's internal forum, an anonymous post was trending, with hundreds of comments. The headline hit me like a physical blow, screaming with malice. Our new West Coast director and her assets for advancement. The post wove a vile, fabricated story. The anonymous author painted me as an incompetent, promiscuous woman who had used her looks to sleep her way to the director's chair. The post even twisted my recent divorce, claiming I was kicked out of my house for cheating on my husband. "A woman who gets ahead by spreading her legs will ruin this division," one anonymous comment read. I sat frozen, my hands gripping the edge of my desk so tightly my knuckles turned white. The depths of human malevolence were truly bottomless. Mark and his cronies couldn't challenge me on professional grounds, so they resorted to the most cowardly attack, destroying a woman's reputation. They thought that a recently divorced woman, alone in a new city, would crumble under such a vicious, public assault and quietly retreat. They were wrong. I smoothed my hair, took a long drink of water to quell the fire of rage in my chest, and stared at my reflection in the dark computer screen. My eyes were cold and sharp, like a newly unsheathed sword. An old proverb says, An innocent person has nothing to fear. I had shed all my tears at JFK. Crying or throwing a tantrum now would only be a sign of weakness, an admission that their trap had worked. I would not play their dirty game. I would use action, and the irrefutable truth of the marketplace, to crush their lies. The show is just beginning. Mark. The vile rumors spread through the office like a virus, poisoning every glance and smirk from Mark's underlings. The narrative was set. I was a scorned woman, desperately clinging to my position through sordid means. The typical response would be a frantic defense, tears, or a demand to find the culprit. But I did none of that. Defending yourself from a mud pit only gets you dirtier. My spirit, forged in the crucible of my marriage, would not be broken by anonymous slander. Instead of hiding in my office, I rolled up my sleeves and marched onto the battlefield. The L.A. sun was relentless, but it couldn't deter me. My first targets weren't the gossips in the office, but the network of distributors who were the lifeblood of our revenue and the victims of Mark's skimming. I went to visit Mr. Henderson, a veteran distributor with a vast network who had recently been threatening to terminate his contract. Dressed not in a sharp suit, but in a simple, practical outfit, my back soaked with sweat, I went directly into his stuffy warehouse to inspect the products myself. Mr. Henderson, a grizzled man in his 60s, initially regarded me with suspicion. He had undoubtedly heard the rumors. Sitting on a worn plastic chair at a roadside stand, sipping iced tea, I got straight to the point. Mr. Henderson, I know your commissions have been squeezed, and deliveries have been late, causing you to lose loyal customers. I'm not here to listen to fake reports. I'm here to be your partner. You help me boost sales, and I guarantee you will receive the maximum commission rate set by corporate, with no corrupt middleman taking a cut. Meow. Mr. Henderson lit a cigarette, taking a long drag. Easier said than done, Director. Mark has run this territory for years. He makes the rules. You're new. Your promises sound good, but can you really clean up his entrenched network? Or will you just stir the pot and leave me to deal with the fallout? I smiled calmly and refilled his glass. My voice was firm. You can trust me. If I had the strength to walk away from a toxic marriage with nothing, I won't hesitate to uproot the rot that is killing this division. All I need from you is to cross-reference your actual inventory orders with the kickbacks you were forced to pay Mark's people. I'll handle the rest. We can't let these parasites continue to feed on the hard work of honest people. My sincerity, determination, and deep understanding of the supply chain won him over. Slowly, quietly, I began to gather irrefutable evidence from the ground up. I ignored the office gossip and worked tirelessly. Lunches were sandwiches eaten at my desk. Nights were spent poring over thousands of documents until my eyes burned. Mark and his cronies were likely celebrating their perceived victory, assuming my silence was a sign of defeat. They had no idea I was weaving a massive net right under their noses. One evening, long after everyone had gone home, there was a tentative knock on my office door. It opened, and Kevin, a regional sales manager, slipped in, quickly locking the door behind him. Kevin was a competent, mild-mannered man who had been constantly bullied by Mark, his achievements stolen, and forced to participate in shady dealings. He stood trembling before me, his eyes bloodshot with stress. He took a deep breath, as if after a long internal battle, and pulled a small USB drive from his pocket, placing it on my desk. "Director, I can't do this anymore," he whispered. "I've been a coward for too long, just trying to keep my job. But Mark is out of control. He's not just skimming from distributors. He's stealing from the salary and bonus funds of the junior sales reps. This USB has audio recordings of him instructing me to falsify documents, along with bank statements showing the dirty money being transferred to his wife's private account. Please, take it. I believe you're the only one who can fix this." I stared at the small black drive. The universe had delivered. I had already hired an independent forensic accounting firm and gathered significant evidence, but this direct, damning proof from one of Mark's own lieutenants was the final, critical piece. It was the checkmate. I stood and walked around the desk, placing a hand on Kevin's shoulder. "Thank you, Kevin. Your courage today will save the livelihoods of hundreds of people here. Rest assured, this will remain confidential. I will handle the storm that's coming." After he left, I plugged the USB into my computer. The files opened one by one, Mark's arrogant voice giving illegal orders, spreadsheets meticulously tracking illicit funds. I leaned back in my chair and, for the first time since arriving in L.A., I smiled a genuine, radiant smile. The trap was set. The arrogant predator was about to be caught. Mark liked to use words to destroy others. I would use the undeniable weapon of truth to shatter the rotten throne he had built. It was time to flip the board. The main conference room of the West Coast Division was so tense it felt combustible. The air conditioning blasted cold air, but it couldn't cool the heated anxiety on every face. This was the quarterly review meeting, the moment of truth. I sat at the head of the table, my black suit a quiet statement of authority. Across from me, Mark lounged in his chair, arrogantly twirling an expensive pen. His cronies shot me smirking glances, anticipating my public humiliation. Mark stood to begin, his tone dripping with condescension. As the Q3 report shows, our revenue has seen an alarming decline, the worst in 3 years. The reason is obvious: the sudden, unrealistic, and frankly, authoritarian changes imposed by our new director. Someone accustomed to the East Coast market can't just impose a rigid management style on the dynamic West Coast. If we continue down this path, I fear the jobs of everyone in this room will be at risk. He paused, scanning the room for support, then fixed his gaze on me. I strongly recommend that corporate reevaluate the director's fitness for this role before it's too late. We need a leader who understands the game here, not a decorative vase who used underhanded tricks to get promoted. A murmur went through the room. Doubtful eyes turned to me. I waited for the noise to die down, then calmly stood and picked up the presentation remote. Mark makes a compelling, aggressive case, I began, my voice even but powerful, instantly silencing the room. He's right that revenue is down and that there's a serious problem. But he's wrong about the cause. The decline isn't due to management style. It's due to the systemic rot of parasites sucking this company dry. I clicked the remote. The projector screen lit up with a detailed cash flow analysis. Columns of red numbers appeared, a direct comparison between corporate's official pricing and the rates given to Mark's key distributors. "Look closely," I said, pointing at the screen. My eyes locked on Mark. "Why does this division offer a 22% higher discount rate than any other region? And why has that 22% never appeared on our official books, instead flowing into anonymous offshore accounts?" According to the independent audit I commissioned, the total sum of this fraudulent activity, this quarter, exceeds $10 million. Mark's confident expression vanished, replaced by a ghastly pallor. He stammered, Where did you get this garbage? This is slander." I smirked, holding up the USB drive Kevin had given me. "Slander? Then perhaps you and everyone else here would like to listen to this." The audio recording filled the silent room. Mark's voice, crisp and clear, instructing Kevin to cook the books. Threats to cut salaries. Discussions about splitting the stolen money. Every word was a hammer blow. Mark collapsed into his chair, sweat pouring down his face, his hands shaking uncontrollably. I stopped the recording and slapped the thick audit report onto the table. "All the evidence of your embezzlement, creating a slush fund, and the slanderous post on the internal forum has been sent to corporate's internal affairs division and the district attorney's office. Your employment, and that of your accomplices, is terminated, effective immediately. This company is not your personal piggy bank." A dead silence fell over the room. The men who had sided with Mark now stared at the floor. In the corner, Kevin's eyes were red, but they shone with pride. I addressed the rest of the staff, my voice softening but still firm. "I am not here for a power struggle. I am here to ensure fairness for those who actually work. Starting tomorrow, our entire system will be transparent. The stolen funds will be recovered and redistributed as bonuses to all of you. Talent and integrity will be rewarded. Anyone else with a hidden agenda, my door is open to accept your resignation." Mark was utterly broken. He was escorted out by security in front of everyone. The rotten empire he had spent years building had crumbled in a single meeting. The daggers he had hidden had turned back on him. I walked out of that conference room, feeling lighter than I had in years. The battle was won, not with anger, but with facts and fortitude. The tears of the past had forged a will of steel, allowing me to wash away the filth and stand tall on my own. The West Coast Division was finally mine to lead, and I knew my true journey had just begun. The Los Angeles sun now seemed gentler, casting a golden, hopeful glow over the city. The office was transformed. The clouds of suspicion were gone, replaced by a hum of productive, transparent energy. Revenue soared. The recovered funds were paid out as well-deserved bonuses. Seeing the division thrive, I felt a deep sense of peace. My greatest peace, however, came from the joy in my parents' eyes. I flew them out to L.A. for an extended vacation. Standing on the Santa Monica Pier, the ocean breeze cool and fresh, I watched them, my heart full. My father, a man of simple means, was beaming, holding my mother's hand and marveling at the sights. My mother, Maria, kept patting my hand, as if to confirm that her daughter was truly here, proud and happy. "Elena, seeing you like this, my heart is finally at ease," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I was so worried about you, alone in a new city, but you are stronger than I ever knew." "My daughter has truly bloomed," I smiled, leaning my head on her shoulder. "It's because of your love and sacrifice, Mom, that I'm here today. And that assisted living community, the reservation stands. But it's for you to have a social life when I'm busy. My home will always be your home." They smiled, a look of pure contentment on their faces. But life always has one final test. As I returned to my office building after dropping my parents at their hotel, I froze. A familiar, yet ravaged figure stood in the grand, bustling lobby. It was David. He looked gaunt, his eyes sunken and hollow. His once immaculate shirt was wrinkled and faded. The arrogant, successful husband was gone, replaced by a defeated, pathetic man. He clutched a cheap-looking gift basket. Seeing me, he rushed forward. "Elena, it's me. I flew all the way from New York to see you. This is some stuff you used to like. Mom told me to bring it." I looked at him, feeling a strange detachment. There was no anger, no hatred, just a vast emptiness. "What are you doing here, David?" I asked, my voice flat. He surged with a desperate hope. "Elena, I was wrong. I know that now. After you left, everything fell apart. Mom is sick, for real this time. She's bedridden, calling your name, full of regret. And Jessica. She took what was left of my money for some bad investment and ran off with some guy, leaving me with all the debt. The bank is foreclosing on the condo. I've lost everything, Elena. I only have you. Please, come back. Let's start over. I swear I'll make it up to you, 1,000 times over." I listened to his litany of woes and felt a deep, profound pity. Pity for a man who, even at his lowest, could only think of himself, still trying to use guilt and suffering as a chain. "David," I said, cutting him off, a faint, final smile on my lips. "You can't unspill a glass of water. Our marriage didn't die from a lack of money. It died from a lack of love and an abundance of selfishness. When I needed you most, when my father was dying, where were you? When your family used morality to bleed me dry, what did you do? You stood by and watched. Worse, you helped them stab me in the back." I looked him directly in his bloodshot eyes. "The agreement we signed in Mr. Adler's office is final. Your debts are your debts. Your mother is sick? Then be the filial son you were always so proud of being and take care of her. As for me, my sentence in your family's prison has been served." David's head dropped, a single, late tear tracing a path down his hollow cheek. He opened his mouth to say something more, but no words came. I walked past him, leaving the gift basket on the polished marble floor. Those memories had no place in my present. "I wish you peace, David," I said over my shoulder. It was the last kindness I had to give. I walked away, my heels clicking a steady rhythm on the floor. The afternoon sun streamed through the glass walls of the skyscraper, enveloping me in a brilliant halo of light. Ahead of me was my office, my team. Ahead of me were trips with my parents to new and wonderful places. I was no longer the long-suffering wife, no longer the scorned daughter-in-law. I was Elena, the woman who had walked through her own storm and found the sunshine. The revolving door closed, sealing away the chill of the past. I stepped into the elevator and saw my reflection in the mirrored wall. A woman with clear, determined eyes and a soul that had been washed clean. Life really does send sunshine. After the rain. And that warmth is reserved for those who are brave enough to stand and walk forward on their own 2 feet.